Center Ukraine. I would like to welcome all the journalists telling the world about our struggle for freedom. It is August 29th, which means that Ukraine commemorates the warriors who had fallen 8 years ago at Lviv. At that time, the Russian occupiers barbarically fired at a large column of Ukrainian military evacuating along a humanitarian Ilovaisk. At that time, the Russian occupiers barbarically fired at a large column evacuating along a humanitarian perpetrated by the Russian Federation in Ukraine. At this current briefing, we're going to continue our conversation about Ukraine's preparedness and Lviv's preparedness for the new school year. We are 3 days away from September 1st, and the reinstitution of proper schooling is a question of national significance. I would like to give the floor now to Ivan Sobko, Deputy Head of the Lviv Oblast Military Administration. Pane Ivane, what will September 1st look like for Lviv? Hello, ladies and gentlemen. The question of educating our children is perhaps the highest priority, perhaps the highest strategic priority today, after our defense capacity, after our understanding that the Russians will be thrown out from our land. Because an educated population, an educated populace forms a nation. Ukrainians, a nation. And so for this reason, the region for this way and will continue to be this way. For this reason, to ensure a quality educational process, a safe educational process, and we are 3 days away now from starting the school year, and we state that we have succeeded by our common efforts. We don't want to particularly stress anyone, but by a common effort, we have managed to achieve the result we'll be talking about today. In pure numbers, I'll very briefly come back to about a month and a half ago, about 6 weeks ago, the Ministry for Education and Science and the emergency service ordered us. There was basically a large file, a thick file, outlining specific steps that need to be taken by the local, regional, and national authorities, which meant that the founders of the educational institutions to ensure a proper and safe learning for our school children. The question today is personally overseen by the head of the military administration. So we, as deputy heads in the regional administration and the local councils, of course, our director of our Department of Education and Science, and of course the general public that cares and want to provide our children with these opportunities, considering the war with the Russians. In spite of the war, we want our children to get a quality education. Last week, we had a number of visits in the Lviv region. One such was the visit by the Minister for Education and Learning, the Ukrainian Minister for Education and Learning. The minister personally participated both in the August conference and where we awarded the best teachers and the best students in both international and all Ukrainian school contests for their achievements, for their accomplishments. The minister, of course, was, as usual, pleasantly surprised by the achievements in the spheres of education and science in Lviv. And of course, there was a flash meeting with the emergency service and the security services, where Mr. Yuri Kahitin, the head of the emergency service in the Lviv region, told us about the work of the emergency service in terms of preparing shelters at schools in the Lviv region. Of course, it's no secret, and it's not a boast either, but the Lviv region today stands, according to all indications, according to all figures, Lviv stands the most ready in terms of shelters. To provide offline education both in schools and in kindergartens and in higher education institutions, including also the network of all institutions, cultural institutions, sports institutions, because we do have learning, we do have education, not only in the network coordinated by the Department for Education and Science. Essentially, we're prepared to state today that we have done our best. We have done our best to repair, restore, whether in total reparations or small-scale reparations, maintenance, to repair the shelters that could be repaired. If there were no shelters in place, then other shelters were repaired in the vicinity of the school, not farther than 100 meters away from the school. That is the general idea, the general picture we have in the region today. And with us also is my colleague, the director of the Education and Science Department. We've agreed that Oleh Volodymyrovich will give us a more number-oriented sense in terms of the network of education, what the situation is. I would just like to conclude my part by saying that as far as regional schools, we have allocated 3.4 million hryvnia for the maintenance and repairs of shelters. We have so far succeeded. All of the shelters today are, as of right now, we're 70 to 90% prepared, and these are perhaps some organizational moments where prior to by September 1st we'll be completely prepared for the new school year. Thank you. Oleh, Paska, Director of the Education and Science Department, Lviv Oblast Military Administration. Would it be correct to say, sir, that we are placing our bets on offline education? Of course, offline learning is far preferable to online and distance learning, because again, I would like to state, although I would like to state that Lviv has a lot of experience in terms of organizing online education. As of today, currently, about 60% of schools are prepared to engage in offline learning. As far as other schools are concerned, they have until September 1st to determine with their PTAs how they will convey their lessons. Because it is according to the current legislation, it is the parents and the schools to determine how the students will be learning. Every parent can determine, by having seen the conditions in the school, how their child will learn. That's the first point. Secondly, out of about 1,100 institutions, schools. I mean, like high schools. 154 have no shelters and have no opportunity to ensure security. So obviously, schools like that can only teach online. As far as higher educational institutions, the biggest we anticipate mixed forms of learning, because these lectures will usually be held online, and then seminars and practical classes will be offline. I would just like to clarify this for a particular family. Like, let's say we take a particular family. Let's say a family looks at what the school offers them, and they decide that this is insufficiently safe for their child. Does this mean that it will be up to them to either accept the rules of the school or find a different schools with online learning? No, the choice can be the following. The parents can write a statement requesting that their child learns studies. Let's take the example out of those 154 schools. They will not be able. Children will not be able to study there offline. Then let's say the children say that their children want to study. Their parents want their children to study offline, and then we look for a school where the opportunity presents itself. If, for instance, we have a shelter, but the parents decide that the shelter is not sufficiently safe for their child, they can put a request, put a claim to that school, and choose distance learning, online learning. Although, of course, in that case, it's up to the school now to determine how to organize this, because the teacher cannot simultaneously teach online and offline. But we've agreed on the following options. For instance, if there's a school that will definitely be teaching online, then we can take all of the children who have the opportunity to study offline, but their parents have chosen online, can be put into this school that will be doing distance learning. If we have questions from the room, please let me know. My question will be, yes, please. Hello, could you tell us, as far as children of IDPs, will there be a lot of IDP children in Lviv, and where will they be going to school? As of Friday, we have about 3,000 students who are children of IDPs. This is not a large number, because as of the end of last year, we had about 30,000 students in our schools. If we take into account that high schools, we're looking at 280,000 students. This is a very small percentage. It doesn't really affect the schooling process. Anivana, would you like to add anything? I wanted to say that let me just broaden the question. To what extent are we co-opting and integrate the children of IDPs? This is what I want to say. This is exactly what I wanted to point out, that the ministry and the military administration and the constitution regulate and provide the opportunity to get a free education in Ukraine, and regardless whether the child is from the temporary occupied Kherson or from the city of Lviv. This is not. We don't even use. We try not to even use the term IDPs. These are our Ukrainian children, and they have to study. We have to provide them equal opportunity for learning for all the children who need it. And really, personally, as a father, I have a child in third grade. I strongly prefer offline schooling. However, yes, there are circumstances, sometimes justified circumstances, where we have to have mixed learning or perhaps Zoom separately. It's not tragedy. It's not a tragedy. We are prepared for that as well. COVID has, unfortunately, but prepared us for that. We have adapted for that as well. We have platforms. The department has done a lot of work in this regard, along with our IT cluster and the different companies helping us. And we are prepared for this as well, for which we're very grateful. If there are questions, please let me know. Today we have, it's also a special day because today we have the results of the entry campaign for the universities. There were we expected higher more people applying for universities. Perhaps this would mean a higher entry threshold. Do you have any preliminary conclusions as to how this school year will be different? This school year, first of all, yes, it's true that the preliminary threshold seems higher than last year, but we ought to say that the biggest problem for us is the residential solutions for students who are coming in from outside the region, because we still have a lot of Ukrainians from the east who are staying in the dormitories of our schools, of our educational establishments and professional schools. We should point out that we have children transferring from eastern Ukraine and from other regions. So This question is a problem for us, but we really hope that the dormitories that have been repaired, that have been financed by the regional budget, we really hope that some of these people will be able to resettle into these dormitories where they will have comfortable living conditions, and this way, this should liberate some premises for the students. Do we have numbers in terms of how many more students there will be? According to our forecast, whereas every year we have 8,000 new students from outside of our region, this year we expect up to 40,000. So by a factor of 5, more by a factor of 5. And if we look at out of 100,000 students that Lviv always had, 40,000 were from outside of Lviv. Well, this number may now reach up to 60, 70,000. So it will be a big load on the residential quarters, residential fund. Are there any ideas about the losses? What school kids and students will the region lose this year? We are, of course, worried for every child. We try to get them involved in the schooling process, even online. We have 26,000 children that were abroad by the end of last school year. Now we will see how many children will be coming in online and how many have come back. Partly children have come back, like teachers do. Half the teachers have returned. This isn't a large number for the education system because we have 34,000 teachers. Out of them, maybe 1,000 left abroad and about half came back. So out of 34,000, it's not a big percentage. This won't be a problem for our curriculum in our schools. But as far as students, we're talking about 10%. So we hope that these schools will provide online learning for all those who cannot study offline. We have examples recently when children come back. Like for instance, when the mother stayed abroad but brought the child back to their grandparents. I will not mention the country, with the words, "The child will lose here. Will lose out here. It's better if they study at our school." This is good. This is good. This means that school is a quality school. To conclude, what will you say to the teachers and to the professors who have to prepare for the school year in these very dramatic conditions, where instead of teachers' conferences, they have air raids, and where instead of preparing their curricula, they have to prepare bomb shelters? What do you tell them? What do you tell them why their work matters now during the war? Education forms the sort of country we will have in 20 years. This is the country for which the Ukrainian army is fighting right now. And again, just to reiterate what I said at the All Ukrainian conference in August, again, great thanks are due to every teacher who not only teach, but who cook, who find shelter solutions, who work as a psychologist, and do many other things, donate to support the armed forces. This is true heroism, and nothing but our unbounded gratitude for these teachers. And we understand that the system of education is essentially defending the state too. And the fact that the point of our struggle is to provide the best possible level of knowledge for the students. I think everybody in education has to understand this. Yes, I would also like to point out three things just to conclude. Firstly, the situation that we have in the state budget for the next year, the attitude is basically not to decrease but to stabilize and increase expenditures for education. We really do have we don't really fully understand the numerical numbers, the numbers of students we're looking at, because some children leave, others come back. And even to calculate the educational subvention, and we have offered this to the minister, that the money ought to follow the child. If the child is not in Kherson but in Lviv, in school number 5 or school number 100, this means that the educational subvention has to follow that child. The communities continue to get involved and will be involved in the fundamental development of learning, not only through the repair and maintenance of shelters, but through building schools, through reconstructing schools. And yes, it is the case today that the schools are fairly comfortable, and the Lviv region have hosted over 500,000 Ukrainians from different regions. Officially, we have 274,000 people officially residing in Lviv. Why schools? Because together with the state and with the communities, we have created the best possible conditions in terms of food, in terms of hot water, in terms of hygiene, sports. The school has everything. And truly, Lviv has a lot to be proud of. But school is an educational institution, and it is our stance that those Ukrainians who are unfortunately forced to escape the aggressive ignorance of the war, of missiles from Zaporizhia, Mykolaiv, Kherson, Donetsk, Luhansk, here to the west, it is our job to provide the best comfortable conditions for them and to provide our children with the best opportunity to get quality education. Because it is, as Oleh said, education, the education of a man of a person is something that shapes the person, shapes the humanity of a person and the national upbringing, nationally conscious upbringing, and the development of our state as such, civic-minded upbringing. So we will continue to do our best to teach, to finance, to help, and to, along with the army, to fight for our common great victory. Ivan Sobko, Oleh, Paska, Lviv Regional Military Administration, thank you for this press conference. This concludes our briefings for today. Please follow our announcements. Stand with Ukraine.